Folks, this year has been an absolute, or maybe not this year, what am I saying? Well, 2020 was an absolute disaster for all the wrong reasons of a year, quite frankly. And there are some things that I need to get off my chest before I actually talk about the games I played, because this is a year we're going to remember for all the wrong reasons, or 2020 will be a year we remember for all the wrong reasons. But if you just want to hear me talk about the games, just skip, but click the timestamp in the description box below the video, and you can just jump straight to me talking about the games that I played this year. Otherwise, because I'm probably already beating a dead horse, and I just also want to put this in here because in the unlikely event this channel ever gets remonetized, apparently dropping an F-bomb within the 30 seconds will get you demonetized for a so-called violation of the verbal morality statute. And I'm using the Dr. Evil air quotes for it because, yeah. So, here goes nothing, I guess. Enjoy my 2020 rant, even though I'm probably beating a dead horse by this point. And enjoy the games that I played. I know this topic has probably already been beaten down into the ground enough times as is, but there's no getting around it. This needs to be said. Fuck 2020. This whole damn COVID-19 pandemic has fucked the world over in the worst way possible. No one can live life normally, and we're still reaping from that in 2021. That would be bad enough, but on top of that, the damn Democrats stole the election with, quote, the most extensive and inclusive voter fraud organization in the history of American politics. Their words, not mine. Certain events led to mass protests and riots because the facts weren't fully out, leading to an addict being a goddamn martyr. We lost the actor who played Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman. We lost my generation's MJ, Kobe Bryant. We lost one of the greatest rock guitarists of all time, Eddie Van Halen. We also lost Jeopardy host Alex Trebek and Millionaire host Regis Philbin. We also lost the best Bond there ever was, Sean Connery. And we lost Brody Lee just when he was coming into his own in AEW. And speaking of pro wrestling, WWE got way too hands-on with what their talent could do outside of work by trying to take their talents' Twitch accounts / Twitch money while treating this pandemic like it was nothing for a decent while, not even letting the talent speak out if they got the goddamn virus. And don't forget Black Wednesday. Oh, what an exhausting mess. On top of that, they fed Bray Wyatt's magnum opus of a character to Aldberg to get him to face Roman Reigns, which didn't happen because Roman did the right thing. Netflix helped distribute a film so vile that I shall dare not speak its name. I'll treat it like Voldemort. The retro game market got way out of hand with certain game prices, even more than it already would have been, not counting Metal Jesus Rock's hidden gemming games. Subway got rid of roast beef, nuking the club, thereby nuking my favorite sandwich from there, the Feast. The Peanuts holiday specials almost didn't air on actual TV thanks to Apple getting exclusive TV rights in addition to streaming them and only caving to the backlash afterwards, allowing them to air on PBS. The Last of Us 2, despite all the controversy, still won Game of the Year at the Game Awards over Ghost of Tsushima. And I lost my goddamn mind on a ship from fucking My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. Damn, damn, damn. Physically and mentally, I am sick and tired. The ramifications of the pandemic will still flow into 2021, which is the worst goddamn part. I feel like that we've entered some alternate fucked up reality where normal living is damn near impossible. Life is a mess right now. This is the worst feeling anyone has ever felt. Ah! So, let's talk about the games that I played in 2020, because I'm pretty sure for most of you, like me, gaming was a big escape for you. And despite the fact that this year was a total train wreck, or 2020 was a total train wreck, I always tend to keep talking in past tense, or current tense, like we're still trapped in that year. It's like we might as well be, because, you know, whatever. I don't want to keep going on to it. Okay, let's just get the bad vibes out. We'll bring in the good vibes. I played a lot of good games this year. Some first-time playthroughs, a couple replays here and there. So, yeah. Let's talk about the games that I played for, quite frankly, the worst year we've ever lived in. So January is always seemingly a busy year for me. You're still quite in that holiday mode of sorts, and you're still playing stuff before you go back to school, and, you know, things like that and all, that kind of deal. And I did beat plenty of games for the month of January, starting with Hard Vendetta. Honestly, this is a shooter I would like to talk more about. I was very disappointed. I technically got this as a Christmas gift in late 2018, but never bothered to play it until late 2019, and eventually that bled into 2020 of January, where I ended up finally finishing it. It takes place after the third Die Hard movie, but unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, depending on your perspective, because of the fourth film, it has now been ruled non-canon, which may be for the better, because the actual game is very bleh. I mean, it's an FPS game that has a very bad checkpoint system, lackluster levels, meh look to it, and it doesn't feel that great, honestly. And there's some really downright cheap shit that will make you fail a level like that. Excuse me, and you'll have to go back all the way to the start. I only picked it up because it was a GameCube exclusive here in North America, whereas it came out on the PS2 and Xbox in Europe. Regardless of which system you get it for, don't bother, unless you are a big Die Hard fan, and even then, I would be cautious. Fortunately, to cleanse the palate, a GameCube favorite, though, I was going to say another, like Die Hard Vendetta was praised so much, but no, a GameCube favorite I played, Mario Kart Double Dash. This was a Retropalooza Houston 2019 pickup. I got the double disc variant with the bonus disc, and I actually went through and got gold on every single cup, even the mirror cups, which is... This is sadly one that I never had because, for some reason, my grandmother on my late dad's side of the family never bothered to get me this fucking game on the GameCube. Well, I guess sort of when I got it, it wasn't quite... I don't know. It just is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous that I had to wait this long to play it. And... well, I do like the game fine enough. I just wish I played it sooner, you know, because, I mean, it's good. Yeah, I liked it. And there's really not much more to say, because what's been said about Mario Kart Double Dash has been said enough times, so yeah. Crimson Sky's High Road to Revenge is a weird case. I've had this game for about 4 years now. It just sat on my shelf. I had picked it up because I had seen it at SGC/RTX 2016. I had bought it. I got it signed by Gerard the Completionist, Pro Jarrett, and Satchel Page, or Satchel from Normal Boots. He was working there at the time, but now he's not. And I originally wanted to get Ridge Racer 5 signed by Pro Jarrett for whatever weird reason, but I was discouraged by bringing it. But then a spur-of-the-moment thing happened. I had the game with me. I had bought it that Saturday. He was over at the Yeti booth in the RTX building after his panel on Saturday. And I went over there, and I couldn't find the damn thing because the map in the app was a lie, and the line was already capped. I had to throw a fucking story up, or really just plead to them, because I was just pissed. I had already gone through another autograph debacle that I'm not going into that ended in failure. I'm just... But I got lucky. I got my Crimson Sky signed. I got a picture with all of them. And yeah, and as for the game itself, it's actually really good. I'm a sucker for flight games, and this one I really should have played sooner. You play, it's kind of a separate ordeal, basically, from, the main PC Crimson Skies game. More of its own separate universe, but it's a similar universe where, the U.S. is split up into various different territories and all, and there's sky pirates who transport things by air. It's a very fascinating universe, and this game was one of the more noteworthy Xbox Live games back in the day, and with Insignia restoring original Xbox Live service, this one will be back online hopefully before we know it. So yeah, and this was a great game. I'm really glad that I did play it. I did this one on my Twitch, so y'all can watch that. Finally, or next up, we have one that has been many years in the beating that I've had for 14 years, but never fully beat until earlier in 2020. Sonic Riders. Mostly I didn't mark this one down as complete, because even though I beat the main stories, I could not get past the mission mode. And if you want to get the 3 special Sega characters, Knights from Super Monkey Ball, and Ooh La La from Space Channel 5, you need to beat the mission mode. And I could never beat some of them because, I'm going to be honest, the original Sonic Riders is way tougher compared to, like, later racing games and the later games in the series. I honestly feel like I should go into more detail with it. But basically, it almost feels like it's as hard as F-Zero GX. Like, both will keep you on your toes enough, and you really have to watch out and, like, really learn the mechanics of those games, basically, in order to get them down. But I'm glad I did, at least. I couldn't believe it myself. Anyways, the first PS2 RPG next up that I beat for 2020, and that's Steambot Chronicles. This was a convention pickup I got from Hovgees. I did have to do some negotiating, but I got it. I got it eventually with a couple other games for 80 total. And the best part is, later that year, I actually met the voice of the actor for the main character in the game Vanilla. He's voiced by Spike Spencer of Evangelion fame. I actually got to meet him at Delta H-Con later that year when I bought it in 2019, and I got him to sign my copy. So yeah, I got him to sign it, and what can I say? I'm very happy I did. This was a unique RPG. It's a very action-heavy RPG where you have these vehicles that are known as Trotmobiles. It's kind of a steampunk-ish kind of world where Trotmobiles are one of the main, where it's an important transportation method. And it's very interesting. It's a very nice sort of Miyazaki-ish kind of world to it. Like, one of the cover quotes mentioned that if Hayao Miyazaki made a game, it would probably be this. And it has that kind of feel-ish to it, mixed with some steampunk-ish elements with the Trotmobiles. Controlling them, if you've ever played any of the Katamari games, it basically kind of controls like that. It's a little tricky, but once you get used to it, it's really fun. And I'm very happy that I did finally get my hands on this one, because when the prices soared because of the fucking pandemic and the stimulus check crap, this one really went up. It was already in that price range, but it is a good game, and maybe just emulate it if it's too expensive for you or out of your budget. The next game I did was a replay of sorts. I decided to do this one for my Twitch, Dead or Alive 3. I have a lot of strong nostalgia for this game, because when I got that stack of Xbox games in, like, either late 2008 or early 09, or late 08, somewhere around there, maybe late 09, I can't fully remember, it might have been 09, but somewhere around the late 2000s, I got a decent stack. It was the later late 2000s, and this game was one of them. This game is what basically started my love for the Dead or Alive franchise, and it's just been going strong ever since, so I thought revisiting it to see if it held up well would be a good idea. And it does, for the most part, although some of the controls, like, they do stronger button presses, and it feels like the pressure-sensitive buttons play a bigger impact than they should. I still did enjoy the game quite a bit, although I feel like I've kind of lost my edge a little bit to it, because I couldn't unlock Ein that day, basically, or when I did it, but I was happy to have done it nonetheless. Going to that stack and playing a game that I've had for as long as I've had, but never bothered to play until now, Star Wars Episode 3: Revenge of the Sith. This game was released as a tie-in with the main movie itself, and actually does use footage from the movie. It's a decent action game of sorts. It's really not one of the Collective's better outputs, if you ask me, because it is kind of on the short side a little bit. Because you could beat it kind of like that. I did manage to beat it in one sitting on Twitch. It was about 4 hours. It might not be fully worth the hassle and the headache, basically. Or maybe so, because, I mean, you can find it for pretty cheap, and it does use actual footage, and it's kind of interesting. But in terms of other outputs from the Collective, like, the gameplay isn't as good as, say, the Buffy the Vampire Slayer game that the Collective did on the Xbox, because that is just one of my favorite action games for that system of all time. And I haven't played Indiana Jones and the Emperor's Tomb. Maybe I'll do that this year at some point. We'll see. Anyways, next up on the list, I finally fully mastered a game that I have not fully mastered, that I've had since a kid, but never fully beat, or never fully mastered. Crazy Taxi, the PS2 version. And it's mostly because of the crazy box mode. I never could get down the crazy bowling minigame. That one was always one that escaped my mind. Well, unfortunately, cheats had to be used just to get through this one, but to knock it off would be a good thing. Although later, eventually, I did master it on the PC. When I picked up the PC port of Crazy Taxi and I replayed it, I actually managed to get it. So, yeah, that damn bowling mini challenge is like the toughest one in the entire game, basically, in the crazy box mode. And again, there's really not much more I can say about Crazy Taxi that has already been said, so I'm just going to leave it there. Finally, we go for the last game of January. I beat 18-Wheeler American Pro Trucker. Yeah, keeping that Sega love going because I never fully played through it, so I did this one on Twitch, did all 5 characters, all 5 main characters because of the rumored lizard tail madness. Might have even busted out the code breaker, but no, lass, not true. That whole thing is false. The lizard tail thing, just, it's a bunch of crap, basically, is what it is. So, yeah, the actual game is still fun, though. I do, this is another one that I have nostalgia for that I've had since I was a kid, but never bothered to really, again, beat until now. But, yeah, what can I say? That basically was, January. Now, let's go on to February. February was a short month in terms of games. I didn't beat that many games in general. School was just busy, and I did put some stuff on the back burner, but I did beat a couple things at least. I had beaten Tekken 3, which was one of the pickups I got from Movie and Games Galore. If I can talk properly today, I apologize. But I had picked it up as a trade-in lot. We're trading in a bunch of stuff as well, you know, DVD to Blu-ray upgrades and all, and some other loose games I didn't need and all. But yeah, and I did manage to find a Black Label complete in box Tekken 3, a little dirty, but I cleaned the thing, and yeah, it works like a charm. And I never actually owned this one before. I played it enough times in the arcade and in main, but never had a full copy until now, and I'm glad I did. Although I haven't fully gotten past the last stage in Tekken Force yet, I hope to eventually do that, but I've gotten the main thing done. I got every other character unlocked except the last one, Boskanovich. Where's it gone? I can't remember. I think it's Boskanovich. I can't, whatever. Anyways, but I'm just happy I did. I got it through it, so yeah. And I love Tekken 3. There's really not much more you can say about it that's already been said, so I'll keep it short and sweet. And finally, I had picked up the Yakuza Remastered collection, and the first game I beat from that collection was Yakuza 3. Now I remember seeing an ad for this one way back in the day, like, more or less, I saw, like, the opening cinematic, like, on G4 television, like, on demand. It was a video there, and it was, like, the opening cinematic for the game, and it just wowed me at the time. Of course, with me not having a PS3 and going the 360 route because of Dead or Alive, I didn't play this game for years, even after I got a PS3, because eventually they remastered it in the Remastered Collection and released 3, 4, and 5 on the PS4, which is where I played it. I did it on my Twitch like I've done with every other Yakuza game, and it's great. Again, there's really too much depth for me to get into here, but it's a great game. It really is, and there's really not much more I can say about that. March was also a short month as well, or not a big month for games, as I only beat 2. This was the month, basically, where the entire world went to hell with all the shit, COVID becoming a full pandemic, and I only had 2 games that I really beat that kept me in line, or at least helped my sanity a little. Starting with Yakuza 4, I was continuing the Remastered Collection here. In 4, I feel like 4 would be one of my lower-tiered Yakuza games, basically, here. Kind of a little towards the bottom. It's not a bad game. None of the mainline Yakuza games are bad, but I feel like this is one of my least favorites out of the bunch until we get to 5 eventually, which I will get to later on. But yeah, 4 at least was the first game that let you play as multiple different characters in a way as well. So you not just had Kazuma Kiryu, You could also play as Shun Akiyama, Taiga Saejima, and I forget the other fourth guy's name, basically, because he's kind of a non-factor. He was a one-off character who only appeared in the fourth game, and that was it, really. He was never been seen since. I do still like the combat and stuff, but I feel like the story probably isn't as good as some of the other ones as well. And there is some really annoying spots in the game. Not so much compared to 5, but we'll get to that when we get to that. But I still like the game, but yeah, second least favorite mainline Yakuza game. Next up, or shall I say last up for March, the game that I bought before the world went to hell, Super Smash Bros. Melee. This was another one that I never got from my grandmother on my late dad's side of the family, which always irked the fuck out of me because this game still goes for money. I wonder how much it goes for now. If we look it up, and hold on a second. Oh my god, $62? I swear to God, the GameCube is going to be an uncollectible system. Even a disc only will run you about $50. What is wrong with everybody? What is wrong with the game market? I'm sorry, I cannot even bother. Look, the game is great. It's Melee. You know what you're expecting from Smash. Smash is fun. It's fine. I just wish I had it sooner. I fucking love the Dreamland stage theme in Kirby here, because it's just, well, in the words of Vince McMahon, it's such good shit. No, for real. I'm actually glad I had Melee, because I had a week off from school before they went back to do all classes online, and I just powered through most of Melee. I still kept playing it too, because there's so much shit to unlock. There's still more trophies I need that I don't have, and I think I'm going to try to do another one of these days. I need to get a code device for Melee, actually, because there are a couple trophies that you cannot get in the North American version, and you need, like, a Game Genie or, like, an Action Replay Max in order to unlock a couple of them. Those of you who played know the ones I'm talking about. If not, just look it up. I'm running out of time. So, yeah, let's go on to April. April, the first full month of online classes at this point, and I still did manage to get a few more in than I normally wouldn't be. Most of these, I'm pretty sure, were done on Twitch, with the exception of one, which we'll get to when we get to it, but we'll start with Yakuza 5, the last of the remastered collection, and I finally have played through every mainline Kazuma Kiryu game. Unfortunately, this is my least favorite of the mainline Yakuza games, because there are some really ridiculous spots. You still have the multiplayer characters, but the story, I feel, is a bit too long for its own good at times, and the final boss is the main thing that pissed me off. Those of you who saw my Twitch stream for it know that I had to go down to easy, basically, in order to actually beat it. When the game prompts you, you've lost enough times to go down to easy, because that motherfucker, I forget his name, but he is built like a tank. Like, do not go in underprepared as Kazuma Kiryu, guys, if you have it. Get yourself plenty of health items, because I learned that shit the hard way. Or maybe not, because the game still gave me the trophy about where it gives you the achievement or the trophy where you beat the game without having to go down to easy. But it's weird, don't ask. Look, the game's fine, I just... that thing irked me. Next up, since I was on that Melee kick, I decided to get Super Smash Bros. Brawl for nostalgia's sake. Did beat that one on Twitch. Unfortunately, the stream was lost. I do apologize, but I lost one part of it, which sucks because there was such good shit in it too. I just mostly played through Subspace Emissary to get all characters unlocked, since I had never beat that as a kid. Like, me and my cousins, we would just fool around in the main mode and not even bother with Subspace. But now we did, so yeah, that's good. And again, it's Smash. You probably know what to expect. This game can divide people, but it's still a great game. But yeah, unfortunately, I played a letdown of a game next, Tribe's Aerial Assault. I just decided to mark it as completion for the sake of it, because I never wanted to really just beat this damn thing again. The game is a lot more clunkier than anticipated too, and trying to bring it like to PS2 really just, it just felt... I felt like the AI was the main problem with the game. It was too difficult for its own good. And the bad news is, with Codebreaker, there are no, like, infinite health codes. You would think the one thing that would matter there is, but it's not. So, I can't even begin to describe it, quite frankly. I just don't really want... I didn't pay a lot for it, but I was kind of let down with it. Not really a hidden gem per se, but maybe if you're curious enough. But curiosity killed the cat, so I'll leave it up to you. Now, the one game that I did not beat on Twitch was Borderlands, the pre-sequel. Again, this was another one several years in the making for beating, quite frankly. But after enough grinding and shit, and even skipping some end side quests, or finding trainers on PC because shit got way out of hand and the leveling was taking so damn long, I finally had gotten through the pre-sequel. The pre-sequel is a weird case, as it falls in that middle ground between Borderlands 1 and 2, and then a little after Borderlands. That's why it's not the definitive 3. Still, even if it feels like a side pack of sorts, I managed to squeeze a lot of hours out of the fucking game. How much did I actually squeeze out of it? If we show the details, I don't even have shit fully locked in there, but I can probably look and see. If I go on Steam and I look at the pre-sequel, I hate this verification, but if I take a look at the pre-sequel, it was about 20-ish or so hours, 23 hours approximately, when kind of just rushing some of the end madness, because it got way out of hand. But it's still a good game. It still has that same Borderlands flair, albeit a little in the middle, and fleshing out how Handsome Jack became Handsome Jack and all. And I kind of feel this one gets more of a bad rap than it should, quite frankly. Sort of like the black sheep of the franchise. I have not played Borderlands 3. I'd like to pick it up at some point, but that's going to be a whole nother testament and brought over of my time that I'm going to have to be ready for. Finally, the last thing I beat, another Twitch favorite, was Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz HD. Kind of one that slipped my radar a little bit, but I'm happy I got it nonetheless. Those of you who hated the Wii controls of the original Monkey Ball Banana Blitz, you'll be very happy with this HD version. All those motion controls, Thanos snapped out of existence. You can use a controller, some levels have been redesigned, they cut out a lot of the filler minigames, and it's just a more tighter version of the black sheep of the Monkey Ball franchise. For real, I always thought the original game got a bad rap, and that there were some people who could just never get the motion controls down. Although some of the bosses can be irking as fuck, if those of you who see me play it on Twitch know. I still would recommend it for those of you who were hesitant to play the original Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz. Give this one a try. I think you'll be won over. I still need to go back and finish the original, though. Or maybe not. I don't know. I'll see. First half of May, I didn't really beat anything. I was pretty busy with just trying to pass my finals, especially my digital circuits class, which thankfully I did. I just wish I could say the same for advanced data structures, but honestly, yeah, I'm not going to get into that right now. I want to get into the games that I beat for May. The first half, there wasn't anything, but the back half is where shit really picked up. Well, the closest to mid-May that I beat, we'll start with Crazy Taxi 2. After having finally mastered the first one, I figured, why not move on to the second one? And with the lack of any kind of cheats whatsoever for this one here, because Dreamcast emulator and all, and not really easy in ways, I really had to step it up. And I did. I finally beat the Crazy Pyramid mode, which is basically Crazy Taxi 2's Crazy Box, but the challenges are all shaped like a pyramid, and I got everyone unlocked, or everything unlocked, I should say. It's basically the same game, but with exclusive Offspring music when you're doing your driving and all in the game. There is some Methods of Mayhem music in there as well for at least the credits and the character select, so yeah, that's there. But I'm very happy I did. And of course the hop function as well made things completely different and all, but it needed to be done anyways. It needed to be done, and I'm glad I got it done. Continuing into tough driving games of sorts, and going to GameCube 1's F-Zero GX. Man, this was an early birthday gift for me, so I ended up playing it on Twitch. Mostly just the story mode, but man, even then, that game is brutally tough. I'm going to be straight up front. This is probably the hardest racing game I've ever played, and probably one of the hardest games I've ever played in general. Like, it has a learning curve. You really have to learn the mechanics down, especially mostly for the later tracks. Like, you really have to study them before you go into them. Otherwise, you're going to go in blind, fall off the course, or get wiped out and just... Yeah, because the AI, they pull no punches when it comes to this game. I mean, it's still a great game, though. The action is intense as hell, and I love the soundtrack for it, too. It's probably one of my favorite game soundtracks of all time. And I beat it the day before my birthday, so yeah, that was nice. Anyways, 3 days later, I beat a game I've been wanting to play for some time now, basically. I had installed it on my hard drive in about fall of 2018, along with its sequel and the spin-off, but never bothered to play through it until May of 2020. The operative No One Lives Forever, Monolith Productions' long-lost first-person shooter. Sadly, I kind of sort of lives up to its name because you can't buy this game on any digital service, and that's a whole nother spiel I really can't go into, but the gist of it is that the rights are split between 3 companies, and no one wants to play ball. Because of this, No One Lives Forever has never been re-released on any digital service like GOG or Steam or anything like that. It's a shame because I absolutely love this game. I love the 60s spy setting of sort. I love Kate Archer as a protagonist. I really love the humor in this game. It's just, I wish I played it when I was younger, quite frankly, but I'm glad I played it now, at least, when I had the chance. And yeah, I can't recommend this game enough. Maybe I'll do a full review of it. Continuing the Crazy Taxi phenomenon, or my Crazy Taxi craving, I went and played Crazy Taxi 3 High Roller. Yeah, or rather, I beat it. Again, I never mastered the thing fully, but eventually I got shit down and I mastered it. And I've actually played the PC version, did some patching to get it playable on modern systems, and to run it at 60 frames per second like the Xbox original. But I feel like Crazy Taxi 3 is my personal favorite of the bunch. I've always had strong memories for this one. I remember getting this, Avatar: The Last Airbender, and AMF Extreme Bowling, all on the original Xbox in an Easter basket, and that's probably the best Easter basket I could ever get. Crazy Taxi 3 took the gameplay from Crazy Taxi 2, put several of the maps from the first 2 games here, and gave us the brand new Glitter Oasis map, which was basically Crazy Taxi Las Vegas. And man, the game really just shined to life. It was graphically the best out of all of them. So much more secrets in the maps too, so they're not entirely the same like they were in the first 2 games. And gosh, I could just keep gushing on and on about this game. It is one of my favorites, so yeah. So I'll just leave it at that before I go on and on about it. Next up, I decided to do a playthrough of the full clip edition of Bulletstorm. Now, I played Bulletstorm back in early 2017, but I never beat the remastered edition. I actually picked up the original during the Steam Winter Sale before it was pulled because Gearbox was doing the remastered edition because of all sorts of shit. I don't even want to get into it fully. Oh, and did I mention that the full clip edition also lets you play as Duke Nukem, albeit through DLC because Gearbox owns Duke Nukem, and it's just letting him sit there doing fuck all, with the exception of this later remastering. The game itself is still great and all, and I'm glad I got to replay it, because I really enjoyed Bulletstorm when I first played through it, and revisiting it through a different set of eyes, quite frankly, literally, since I did do the entire playthrough as Duke Nukem. Yeah, and I did stream this one on my Twitch, so watch that if you can, and if not, well, go play it for yourself anyway. You really should, regardless. Anyways, continuing PS2 RPG madness, I actually knocked off one that I have been playing for some time now that never bothered to fully beat. This one's actually a toughie. And even though the only cheats I really was able to use was infinite money cheats with this one, but it's a weird case, but it's a niche one, but a damn good one. Front Mission 4. It's a strategy mech RPG in the long-running Front Mission series, and was one of the first ones, I believe, if not the first Front Mission game to be on the PS2. And yeah, it's a strategy RPG, and you're basically controlling these mechs, or Wanzers as there's known, dealing with international war and you sort of command your squadron of mechs around the battlefield, taking down other mechs. It has a crazy story. You play it from two different sides, like, of the armies that are involved, or some of the groups that are involved in it. And it's an insane game. It's also, it can get pretty tough too. Like, battles tend to drag out for a pretty long while, actually. And not to mention, like, other parts can also get damaged in your mech. Like, each Wanzer, I should say, or Wanzer, has, like, the head, which is, if you take that down, that's an instant kill. But there's also the legs, which if you take those down, cripple the movement. And the arms as well, which can hold the weapons and all that jazz. So if you take out an arm, they have no weapons to use. Same thing can happen to you, so you really have to be careful and play everything out. It kind of is a longie, but the satisfaction I felt when beating it was damn good. And given no health cheats were used in the process of this one, yeah, this was a lot tougher than anticipated, but I found a way. I always do. I probably would give it a go if you want a more tougher strategy RPG, and there's really not much else to say about it. Next up is Katamari Damacy Reroll. Last year I played We Love Katamari after picking it up from Captain Retro's booth at Retropalooza Houston 2019, the sequel, and now I finally picked up the first game, and I ended up playing it through, and it's pretty much what I expected. Again, more Katamari fun, rolling a ball up, and just rolling the whole world up, I should say, and just, it was a great friggin' time. It really is just a simple game, even if it's weird as hell, but that's what I love about it. And finally, to close off the month of May, Spider-Man 2. Since current birthday plans were messed up because of the whole pandemic, I just stayed in. I picked up the Spider-Man trilogy on Blu-ray, the Sam Raimi trilogy, binged the entire thing, and yeah, it was worth it to revisit the films yet again. And while on that Spider-Man kick, I figured, why not play through one that I had never beaten? I played it on the original Xbox, but never beat it, and I decided to play through it on Twitch for the hell of it. Spider-Man 2. Before Insomniac's Spider-Man, this was often regarded as the best Spider-Man game, and for good reason, too. It really improved upon the game that came out before it, which was also developed by Treyarch, but now the swinging was more improved, so you could actually swing in buildings like Spider-Man. You wouldn't have your friggin' webs just cling up into the clouds like the first game. And you had a more open world kind of feel to it as well. Although some things did get repetitive with fighting and all, fighting random thugs and other stuff, I have to say I'm pretty happy with it. And some of the bosses can get pretty frustrating, as those of you who saw my Twitch stream saw. Yeah, but I still managed to get through it in about 6 hours. I'm very happy that I did. I still like the game overall, and yeah, that's going to do it for May. As always, June always seems to be a busy month for me when it comes to games. Normally when you're out of school by this point, you're settling more into relaxing mode for the summer, and I got a lot of games done because of it. We'll start with Hunter the Reckoning Wayward. For some reason, I could never find this particular entry of the Hunter the Reckoning series out in the open at any convention, so I had to snag it off eBay. It's not an expensive game, thankfully, but it was a bit of a pain to find. It's basically more of the same of what you would expect from the first Hunter the Reckoning, and I do believe I talked about it a little bit in my games I played in 2019 video, when I played the first game in the Hunter the Reckoning franchise. But basically, Wayward is more of the same of what you would expect from a Hunter the Reckoning game, just on a different console and all. And there's really not much more I can add to it. If you like the first one, you'll probably like the second one as well. Next up is I beat Spartan Total Warrior. Now, I already did a full review about this one, so please go check that out if you want the full gist of it. But the short version is, it's an interesting game that, while it can be fun, it does feel a little drawn out at times, and can be a little tough for its own good. But for one of Creative Assembly's first attempts of a non-strategy-like game, it could have gone way worse. Now, continuing that Spider-Man kick, basically, I finally bought Marvel's Spider-Man, the Game of the Year edition, and did a playthrough of it on my Twitch, and I have to say, this is now my favorite Spider-Man game ever. And now it's pretty much what people consider the best Spider-Man game of all time, and for good reason. It really improves on all the swinging to the point where everything is just fluid as hell. You can do so much on top of that, like running on walls. And it all looks great as well. It has that Arkham style like combat. It's a great game in general. Actually, probably one of my favorites on the PlayStation 4. And I'm very happy that I got to play it. Next up was Anamusha Blade Warriors. This was a spin-off of the Anamusha franchise, featuring some of the other characters doing Super Smash Bros. Like battles and all, but with a more 3D-ish perspective and that Anamusha kind of flair. Again, I did a full review of this one, but the game was fine. Nothing really too great, but it was fine for what it was. See my review for more information, as I do want to keep things short and sweet here and not drawn on about games that I've already talked about before. Next up in the, this was the only James Bond game of the 6th generation that I did not beat. I beat the other 3, From Russia with Love, Agent Under Fire, and Nightfire, but I did not, or not Nightfire, From Russia with Love, Everything or Nothing, and Agent Under Fire, but it was Nightfire that I had not beaten at this point. And I just said, screw it, I might as well go ahead and get it and give it a shot. And I actually really did enjoy the game, albeit I had trouble with it when I was streaming it in PCSX2 because it was getting way more intense than it should have been. But for the most part, this game itself was just... Actually, I don't know, I feel mixed on it. I love the atmosphere of it and some of the gameplay and all. But there are some levels that are just too brutal for their own good. I don't know, it's kind of complicated. Maybe I should review this one and fully put into details how I feel about it, alongside all the other Bond games of that generation, since they're all pretty interesting. Continuing spy-themed first-person shooters, the next game that I beat for the month of June was 13. 13 is a very interesting game. It was based off a comic book, and it used a cel-shaded style, or used as a cel-shaded style, and it has such a unique look to it. The shooting isn't, well, it's pretty much your typical shooting, which it still works fine, but the style of the game really helps elevate it finally to a whole nother level. Thankfully, I was able to pick this up on Steam for only $6. It helps that they were doing a remake of it, or maybe not, because the remake ended up being hot garbage, and I do not recommend you play it because the cel shading style goes, and a lot of that unique flair that was in the original game here is completely lost in the remake, and there's a lot of technical problems with it as well. But the original is thankfully available on GOG and Steam and all the like, after being gone off of GOG for almost, 8 to 9 years? God, that's hard to believe. But do play it if you haven't gotten a chance. It's not a particularly long game, but it's still a very enjoyable one. Next up, I wanted to play a wrestling game, so I ended up picking up WWE Raw 2. Out of all the WWE Xbox games, this is the one that has the most positive reviews of the bunch. And when you look at it, you can kind of see why. The gameplay does flow pretty smooth, but at the same time, the controls take a little bit getting used to if you've played the SmackDown series on the PS2. It's a very different jarring transition, even though it shouldn't be too off, but whatever. It still at least graphically looked pretty good as well, allowing custom soundtrack support, unless you're playing it on the 360, but that's a whole nother story. And to be honest, I enjoyed it. Albeit I got stuck in a few parts, but I did manage to get through season mode in one go, get all the arenas, which are really the only things that you need to really unlock that matter anyways, and all. But yeah, it did go up for a little while because of the pandemic and the stimulus checks and the price spiking, which is kind of ridiculous. But it has starting to weed its way back down in price, and as of writing at the time of this video, it has gone down to around $18 for a complete in-box copy, so should you want to get one, it's definitely cheaper than it was before, but I managed to soften the blow with some birthday money, so yeah, that helps. Unfortunately, a game I played afterwards that was frustrating as hell, that angered me to my core, Evil Dead: A Fistful of Boomstick. I was really disappointed with this game. It was way too difficult for its own good, and I had the worst fucking luck with this game, quite frankly. When I bought it, the packaging that the shipper from eBay, that the shipper who I bought it from, the person I bought it from on eBay, did not pack it in a way to protect it from rain. And unfortunately, it was raining that day very badly, and let's just say the game was not really protected, and when I got it, the insert was fucking ruined. It had suffered too much water damage. It was not protected from the shippers, from the USPS, and it's just a fucking mess. I was mad, and that was only just the start of it. I just had a bad experience with the game. I just kept getting my ass kicked. It just felt ridiculous. It was too overwhelming for its own good, and the difficulty only pads out the length of it further. In reality, it's not even that long of a game, but it's just... And I got so mad on stream that I did something that I've never done before, and that is I broke the game case entirely. I broke it against my knee because I was so irate, and you could even hear me on stream just breaking it. I was just pissed. I was pissed with the artwork insert that I had to track another one down, which was damn near impossible. It was damn near impossible to do so, mind you. And I was just unhappy. I want to give the game another chance. I feel like it was just unfair to it. But I just had a bad experience. I just felt lost in the game. I didn't know where to go at times. It's not helpful because there's no map or pointer too much, at least. Even though some of the levels don't feel big, you really just... it's just... I can't even. I gotta stop. I hate to end this here, but... If I keep going on, I'm just going to keep going on about this game. Maybe I need to do a separate review of it. That might help me solidify my thoughts on this. July is always a busy month. Still in that summer mode, you know, and I still beat a decent amount of stuff to cover, so let's get into it. Starting with Castle of Shikigami 1, a bullet hell shooter that I've been wanting to play for some time. And seeing as how it finally did get a PC release a little while back on Steam, I figured, why not pick it up and give it a go? So I believe I picked this up during the summer sale. And eventually, yeah, I did do a short Twitch run of it. Okay, maybe a couple runs. But it's kind of unique and stuff with how it all plays out with the plot and how it's all set up, if I could just find it. Unfortunately, I can only find the second one when I type in Castle of Shikigami, which is kind of annoying because the sequel hasn't been re-released, but the first game, it has been. So yeah, it was sometime in 2017 when it was released, but I didn't, at least re-released, but I didn't get to it until sometime mid last year. It's kind of crazy because a string of murders basically take place in Japan, Tokyo, serial murders, July of 2005, and all the victims are female and killed by external injury. And the killings happen within 20 hours, and then on July 21st, they find the 31st victim. The case is then classified as a special crime and seeks investigators from occult sources. And I don't think it fills out the rest, but I think you get the idea, basically. It's kind of a unique shooter because when you hold down the attack button, you move at a slower speed and all on-screen items are automatically retrieved. And when you activate a special attack, you're invincible. And when you're close to an enemy bullet, you get the points gained from destroying enemies and retrieving items is actually, it multiplies based on the distance between the bullet and the player character's center. It's a unique concept that I don't think is, that really helps. It really helps make the game stand out from other standard bullet hell shooters. And I have to say, it's probably worth a go if you can get it for a decent price. Anyways, next up on the list is, oh boy, we have a double dose on the 4th of July. And one of them is a game I can't stand. Sigh Girls. I've already reviewed this game. I don't want to talk about it anymore. The short version, or the Cliff Notes version, is that the game is too confusing as hell with its level design, has bad puzzles, too much backtracking that would make even the most backtrackiest of Metroidvania games blush, and it just ruins the experience. I've already talked about it further in depth in my review of it, so go watch that, because I don't feel like talking about this anymore. Oh, and I'll never forget the glitch on the Marshall Islands math puzzle that basically would not work for me. Anyways, next game. So to cleanse that palate, I played Bloody Roar 3. Now, unfortunately, this was another one that went up in price because of the pandemic. Luckily, I had gotten Bloody Roar 4 for a decent price with all that trade-in credit. I've mentioned the full story in the games I played in 2019 video, so find that when you get a chance. But for the most part, I actually did still manage to get Bloody Roar 3 for a decent price, thanks to enough eBay purchases to get a gift card from Honey for about $10. And I found a decent enough copy that would knock the price down on it off eBay to something more reasonable. And it was a Canadian import. Or I bought the copy from Canada, where their dollar is not the best value at this moment. So I did get it slightly cheaper, at least, than what it would have been had I bought a copy from the States. Bloody Roar 3 is a bit more tighter and a little bit more tougher compared to the fourth game. But it was probably the last true good game that fans of the franchise would say. I don't know, I had some trouble with this one. It did feel a little too difficult for its own good. And if you want to unlock a couple characters, you really gotta get that shit down, or else you're in trouble. Maybe with enough practice I might be able to, but I don't know. Truth be told, I've never really been a major Bloody Roar fan, but after just not having played it, I just wanted to see what the hype was all about. So yeah, but it's still a good game and all. Just not sure it'd be my type of fighting, but maybe I'll give it another chance later down the line, and we'll see what happens. Anyways, we got a double dose of Sega love for these next two games here. Next up, we've got Team Sonic Racing. Now, we've always had these kind of teamish kind of kart racers. It's always crazy how they tend to do it, like Mario Kart Double Dash, how you'll have a character in the back handling your power-ups and stuff while you do the driving. Or in, say, Crash Tag Team Racing, where each card is individual, but you can morph with other characters and team up with them like you would in a Double Dash. This game, though, is completely different from both of those, which that was kind of my idea, was something like one of those two games going into Team Sonic Racing. But that's not really the case at all. Instead, it kind of does a 3-on-3 style racing. Like, you control one team, and your opponent is on another team and all, and you guys basically work together. Like, you'll draft behind each other for boosts and things like that and all. And I have to say, the title itself is very damn enjoyable. It ran like a charm on my system, and the game itself is pretty fun as hell as well. I really did enjoy it. It looked great, it played great, and I feel it was kind of a nice spice up to the Sonic Sega All-Stars-ish formula, even though we've completely dropped the side Sega characters and have only focused on the Sonic the Hedgehog characters. But you know what? I do like Team Sonic Racing, and yeah, I probably would recommend it still. From racing to Platinum Games, next game on the docket is Vanquish that I beat. Now, this is kind of a more underrated-ish Platinum Games. In the long haul of Platinum Games releases, this is one that I want to say I feel like it didn't get talked about enough for a while. Excuse me, when it came out during the 7th generation, because it initially came out on the PS3 and Xbox 360. Eventually, Platinum Games re-released it for 8th gen consoles, PS4 and Xbox One, and they even gave it a PC release too. I should mention that the PC port is a brilliant port, by the way. It still looks pretty good, and despite being an older game, it still can kind of push your system, and it can feel, let's just say, the heat quite a bit. And this is from a game that, gosh, how old is this game? But like I said, it was a 7th gen game, and if I pull it up, it was released in 2010, but the PC port came out in May of 2017. I believe I got this one for $5. Although it's not a very long game, but it's still a good game. When it typically goes on sale for that price, I would absolutely recommend that you play it. You has a cover system like Gears of War. You can slide around too with this sort of jetpack like thing, or this packed armor suit that kind of has like boosters in it that will let you just slide around. It's crazy. It's insane. It's got that same crazy over-the-top flair you would expect from Platinum Games with a futuristic sci-fi look. And yeah, as of writing this, during the current Steam Winter's Sale, which is set to end on, Winter's Sale, which is currently set to end on, whatchamacallit, if the thing would load, January 5th. Yeah, you might as well snag it while you still can. But, hey, if you don't, just wait till the next time it goes on sale and get it in. Because it is short, like I said. But it is a very, very fun game. Next on the list, Lego Star Wars The Force Awakens. Moving away from Sega and into Legos. Lego Star Wars The Force Awakens was the next entry in the Lego Star Wars line after Lego Star Wars 3 The Clone Wars, which kind of focused on that mid-period during the prequels, you know, the Clone Wars era and all. Here, this entry, Lego Star Wars The Force Awakens, focuses on what else? The then 7th film and the start of the sadly disgraced sequel trilogy, The Force Awakens. And I have to say, this one actually was kind of interesting with some of the things that it decided to do. Even though it pretty much still feels like a Lego game, there's still a major difference that helps it stand out. The game itself, the way the hub is primarily set up, seems to be the thing. And it kind of is different, because you can travel between different worlds now and do other side things as well, as opposed to the old format. Let me put it to you like this. If you've played Lego Star Wars, the complete saga, or any of the Lego Star Wars games prior to this one, and then you play this one, you're going to notice a difference of sorts. It's not too big of a difference, but it is kind of a difference nonetheless here. There's mini builds as well, or multi-builds I meant, pardon the Freudian slip, multi-builds to grant access to various building options, which you can destroy these objects and then rebuild them in certain brick building sections of the game, allowing for new paths to be opened within the game's world and solve possible puzzles as well. There's also blaster battles as well, which allow you to hide behind and engage cover, kind of like a shooter of sorts. And you can freely explore many of the worlds, like mini open worlds. And actually, the game also bridged the gap between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, which gave Lucasfilm with Lucasfilm allowing for creative freedom and additional content to explore the characters' backstories. But that's really the major difference. It still plays out like you would expect, and at least I'm glad I got it done, because I just had it sitting in my backlog. There's really not much more to say about it. It's what you would expect from a Lego Star Wars game with a couple few new things in it, so yeah. And continuing my love for the first No One Lives Forever, I decided to go and play the sequel finally. Might as well get this done over the summer while I still can. No One Lives Forever 2, A Spy in Harm's Way. Nolf 2 I feel is both an improvement and yet a couple steps back for the first game. A couple steps back in regards to certain things being taken out, like no new game plus. One of the best things about the first Nolf was that when you acquired certain gadgets, you could go back and replay levels with those newly acquired gadgets and find secret areas to find more intel and things. Here, that's not the case. You can't even select your gadgets before missions, and it's kind of a little backwards with that. And there's no new game plus, so you can't go back with your upgraded stats and all. Oh yeah, Nolf 2 introduces a stat system, by the way. And said, like, as you earn points for completing objectives and stuff, you can increase Kate Archer's abilities and stuff and make her a fully fledged badass spy by the end of it when all's said and done. So though, there are some improvements on the stealth in Nolf. Like, you can finally move bodies around, you have a lean button so you can peek around corners and all that stuff. The stealth itself is way more improved compared to the first. I just do wish there were some other things that weren't done, but it still looks good, still plays good. It has a great story that's more Cold War era than the first game of sorts. but it's still a really, really good game as well. And sadly, this was the last main hoorah for Nulf, given the whole rights fiasco, but I'm not going to get into that, because I could take up more of this video than I want to. But play Nulf 2 and the first one. Finally, to close off the month of July, I decided to do a horror game of sorts. Siren. Siren is a very fascinating horror game of sorts. It takes a lot of influence from J-horror, kind of like Ju-on, The Grudge, and and film franchises like that. Think of that like those when you basically are thinking of J-horror that influence Siren of sorts. What also makes this game unique is that there are multiple different branching paths to story. Well, the story is played out through multiple characters, and their different perspectives of this kind of possessive, kind of crazy stuff. It's a supernatural disaster in a fictional rural Japanese town of Hanayuda, and the events are kind of presented out of chronological order like a Tarantino movie, and you deal with efforts of view characters trying to escape town and find answers to whatever the hell happened following this supernatural disaster. But it's told through 10 survivors. You'll alternate between their various different perspectives. The annoying thing about this game, though, is because there are 10 perspectives and there are kind of multiple different paths. It kind of tends to branch out in kind of too many bigger ways. Like, after a certain point in the game, you can then start freely jumping between characters and completing different objectives and that weren't there before. It's kind of complicated. It seems complicated at first, but it's really not. I feel it's more difficult to explain. But after a certain point, you can start doing different objectives or different ways, like to try to get to the other stages, to get to the ending. Because it can branch out like crazy too, and if you're not careful, you can get lost pretty easily though. The game really oozes in its atmosphere, and that's what makes it stand out for me, is its atmosphere. This game is downright creepy as hell, and is right up there with the feels that you get from various other horror games of its kind, like Silent Hill. Although Silent Hill is probably easier to follow. Still, this game is kind of interesting enough. Sadly, it was another one that was starting to weep its way up in price when the pandemic hit. But as of now, oh my god. Well, right now, it's a $26 game. I paid around $25 for it. Maybe it'll eventually keep weeding its way down. The game used to be like a $10 to $11 game, or $15. The pandemic just keeps fucking these game prices up, folks. What are you gonna do? But still, Siren is a good game, albeit an interesting but flawed one, but might be worth a look if you're into horror. Moving into August now, the month where you gotta get as much done as possible because work mode / school mode is about to kick back in, and some of us, well, we gotta get what we can done before something goes off the rails, so yeah, or before we have to put gaming on the back burner. So I got as much done as I could. Several things on Twitch, but mostly seemingly just casual stuff here for me. First one that was done on Twitch was Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers. Now, the crazy thing is, I actually had this game in my possession at one point, is when I picked up my slim PS2 in late 2018. This was one of the games I got in the bundle. However, I never ended up playing it, as I didn't have a desire to play it at the time. Then, the crazy thing is, I go and I find a copy of Kart Fury for the PS2 in one of my local used game shop / media shops. And the thing about Kart Fury, why I bring that up, is because the case it was in, well, it was used in a case that was previously used to buy Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers on the PS2. I thought, and it had the official hologram, and I'm like, that's not right. Let me at least put it back in a case where I can actually get it, where it would make sense. So I picked up a copy of The Two Towers without the hologram on eBay from the PS2 because it's a cheap game, so why not? I swapped the cases around and put The Two Towers in the tray pile. But before I did, I decided to give it a playthrough on Twitch, and it was alright. Honestly, it's not a too crazy not a great hack and slash, but a decent one at that as well. Truth be told, The Two Towers is my least favorite out of all the trilogy. Not much really happens in that movie anyways, and it kind of reflects in the game itself. And sadly, it kind of does drag on, or feels drag on at times because of this, and some of the ending levels can get way too crazy. But it's still a decent enough Lord of the Rings game. But the real one you probably want is Return of the King. I haven't found it on the Xbox, though, but I'm going to try to get it. Well, technically PS2, but emulation. I don't want to get into it. It's a decent game, though. Wanted to get some racing goodness in it. I ended up getting Outrun 2 on the Xbox. And with Insignia basically relaunching, I thought this would be a good one to have for when the service comes back online. And I got it for a good price, too, so yeah. And boy, this one was crazy as hell, but I friggin' love Outrun 2, though. This is pretty much one of my favorite racing games. It looks great, it plays great, has a great soundtrack to it. Another one of my all-time favorite soundtracks in general. And there's really not much more I can say about it that hasn't already been said. Anyways, I did a thing on Twitch at least, or at least did one run through of, but was playing it casually over the summer in my spare time. Freak Style. Yeah, what can I say about this one that I haven't already outlined in my review? Well, it's a great racing game. One of EA Sports' big's underrated games, if you ask me. And one that, quite frankly, more people should play. And I've never really fully mastered it until now, so yeah, I'm just happy I did that. Now here's a game that I had in my backlog since Retropalooza Houston 2018, I believe, but I never got around to it until summer 2020, and that was Amazing Island. The back of the box described it as Pokemon meets Mario Party, but that's not necessarily the case. It's more like Monster Rancher meets Mario Party. It's also a relatively short game, too. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it's like if I'd known it sooner, I would have played it way sooner. And eventually, after learning some of this and how everything was supposed to be and fully grasping some of the mechanics and stuff, and some of this madness that you deal with in Mario Party dragging over here with the minigames, this one actually isn't too bad. There are kind of a couple caveats with it, though, like there isn't too much, like there's no 4-player multiplayer modes on anything, even though it's on the GameCube, so it makes me wonder why the hell this was exclusive when it damn well could have been ported to the PS2 and Xbox. Maybe there was something between Sega and Nintendo, I don't know. It's a decent enough game, and one that if you find out in the open, I say go for it. Next up was another one that I had sitting in the backlog for what felt like the longest time possible, Everblue 2. This is a scuba diving game brought to you by the fine people over at Arika and was published by Capcom. Now, this was a sequel to the first Everblue as well, which never came out over here in North America. But if any of you watching this are abroad, like if you live in Europe or Japan, you probably have already played it at one point. But sadly, we never got it for whatever reason. Yet we got the sequel, which is just weird. And it's still called Everblue 2, even though the first game, there was never Everblue 1 in the same. It's weird. The game itself is kind of a very interesting ordeal. Like, you have a hub world that you sort of traverse around to basically plan your scuba trips and stuff. And you're always looking for key things, and it's a very insane thing here. But basically, your ship sinks, and you swim to a nearby island. You meet a group of scuba divers called the Amigos, and then you deal with this salvaging company of sorts who is looking for a pirate treasure called Erebos, and you're racing against time to basically get it before they do. You go through all these crazy things, like you go through a sunken ferry, a crashed 747, an old cruise ship, a pirate galleon, and you even find a friggin' ancient underwater city called Telospolis, Telospolis. It's kind of hard to pronounce, but I actually kind of would recommend it. It's a weird game that relaxes so much so. Like, it's a very relaxing game. It really is, even though you kind of against the trouble. Like, I do kind of recommend it in a weird way. Next up, a little more Star Wars love. I beat quite a few Star Wars games this year, and this one was a shorty, so I figured why not get it done while I got a chance over the summer. Star Wars Starfighter. Another one that sat in my Steam backlog, but eventually I did get through. Starfighter itself is kind of one of those, it's a flight game basically. It's a flight game set in the Star Wars universe. It takes place like primarily during the Clone Wars, and it's insane. And like the final battle that you do in this game actually does take place like during the kind of other final battle that's going on in space in episode 1. It really is a kind of a weird, but it's an interesting game nonetheless. It's right before the Battle of Naboo, and you actually also do help out in the Battle of Naboo itself. And I have to say, this game is pretty enjoyable as well. It is a bit short, on the short side, but there is a fun one to do. And I have to say, for being the prequel to Jedi Starfighter, it's actually not too bad. I mean, you do the standard stuff. You fly around, you take down big ships and all, or big objects and all sorts of stuff. There's really not much. If you've played one Star Wars flight game like this or Jedi Starfighter, you've practically played the other one. Although Jedi Starfighter, I feel, is slightly better, this one still holds its own and is worth a playthrough. Next up, this one was done for Twitch, Project Snowblind. This is a first-person shooter that was developed by Crystal Dynamics, if I remember correctly, and published by Eidos. Yes, Crystal Dynamics, the people who would eventually take the reins for Tomb Raider. And actually, this game originally was planned as part of the Deus Ex series with consultation from the original developer Ion Storm, but it still retained its Deus Ex roots, but eventually spun off into its own game. It's pretty interesting, the story with it and all, and the game itself is fine enough, although it is a bit short as well. But the gameplay itself is insane. Like, you have all these augmentation powers and all, and then eventually they become active as the game goes on, and you get all these powers and all. It's not really too much stealth-like at times from Deus Ex, although there are a couple segments. It is still an interesting game, and it is not too long again, so it's worth a playthrough. Are you noticing a pattern, folks? Speaking of short ones, Disney Stitch Experiment 626 was next in my backlog to beat. I was actually surprised with this one and how short it was. I would like to talk about this one more in depth, but the short version is, it's an action-adventure kind of platformer, almost like a pre-Ratchet and Clank kind of ordeal. And this game came out like in June of 2002, around the same time that the movie came out, the original Lilo and Stitch, much before Ratchet and Clank came out. But you can kind of see some similarities here and there. There's not a whole lot per se, and there are a few different things, but it's not a terribly expensive game. It was a Retropalooza Houston 2019 pickup that I got for $5, and I'd say it's about worth it at that price. Maybe a little more if you can't. I'm not sure. We'll just have to see. Next up was Renegade Ops. This was kind of a isometric-ish driving kind of shooter, twin-stick-ish, almost kind of like Neo Contra on cars. It was developed by the people who made Just Cause, Avalanche Studios, and it is definitely a short one, as I beat this in one sitting, but it's enjoyable. It is enjoyable. Like I said, it's basically like Neo Contra, but with cars and a lesser difficulty, because, and all. But there's really not much more I can say about it. It was a shorter one, because it was originally released on PlayStation Network and Xbox Live, and yeah. I would probably get this one on a sale. Finally, the last game I beat for the month of August, was Hunter the Reckoning Redeemer. So now I have finally beaten the whole Hunter the Reckoning trilogy. And what can I really say about this except, oh, thank God. Again, it's much of the same, like Hunter the Reckoning Wayward and Hunter the Reckoning 1. If you played the other one of those two, you've probably played this and vice versa in any combination of sorts. the most interesting thing about it is that the young girl that you escorted in the first game, exactly, because there's a mission early on in the first game where you escort the girl herself. There's a young girl that you escort, basically. And let me see if I can find it there. If I can find it. And yeah, her name is Kaylee Winter. That's her name here. Yeah, and she basically is now old enough to fight them, so you team up with the other hunters, the original 4 hunters from the previous games, and you have her as now a playable option to continue to investigate this madness between the werewolves and the incidents in Ashcroft and Geneflex Corporation. It's so much to explain, but pretty much I feel like even though the level design can be a little bit of a mess, the game is still enjoyable if you enjoy this type of stuff. And yeah, there's not much more to say about it. And that's pretty much it for the month of August. Let's go to September. Even though September was busy for me, given that I was back in full school mode, I still found time to beat some games. It seems that most of my stuff was Twitch, with the exception of one, which we'll get to when we get to it. We'll start with Tech and the Power of Juju. You know what? I think I am going to save this one for a longer review because I have some words for this game, and those of you who saw the stream. But anyways, yeah, to say the least, I was very disappointed with this game. It did not live up to what I was hoping it would be from what everyone else was saying, and I was just let down with it. Maybe the sequel was better, which I did beat that as well, Tac 2, The Staff of Dreams. Again, only slightly better, but I feel like the TAC series is in need of a serious reevaluation on my end. Let's just say things were going fine with TAC 2 until the very end, where it all just fell apart, and I couldn't take it anymore. And a cheap cop-out, yeah, I'm not going to get into it. I might as well just save it for now. I'm going to save this one for a full review later down the line. Now, the one non-Twitch game I meant to say that I did not beat on Twitch, but I played on the side for fun, was ToeJam and Earl 3 Mission to Earth. I'd had this one for some time now, but never bothered to get around to it, or at least playing on and off until I fully got into it in this mode. But I'm finally glad I did. It's a decent platformer. Certainly was one to just cleanse the palate of the TAC games, but at least it was easier to get through. And the game itself does have its own kind of little bit of funkiness to it. Let's just say Ernest the Cat Miller would love this fucking game. And there's really not much else I can say. It was the last ToeJam and Earl game to have Sega involvement, and the last one until the 4th one eventually came out like a couple years back. Haven't played that or the first 2, but hopefully I get around to those at one point or another. Finally, the last one to cover for the month of September, and the last Twitch one as well, besides the 2 TAC games, Star Wars Republic Commando. This was the last Star Wars game I beat for the year, and I have to say, I'm pretty happy with it too. Or at least I'm fine enough with it, not maybe fully happy, but happy enough. The game itself kind of takes place from the perspective of kind of a group of bounty hunters, like a squadron-ish. It's kind of like what people describe as Rainbow Six Star Wars, but even then, it's really not that much tactical in the long run of things. You'll still have to do things like command your other squad mates to assist you with maybe flipping switches or manning turrets and things like that. So there's a little bit of tactical play into it, but it's really not a whole lot too much in the long run. You could still get by it just fine if you're not into those heavy tactical like FPSs like Rainbow Six. And again, it continues to flesh out more lore that we wish we still had with Star Wars these days, but if you see it on sale, give it a go. I think you'll enjoy it. Can't believe it took me 2 years to get to this one. So, for October, I wanted to play more horror-themed games that I had sitting in my backlog that I never got a chance to play or put off for the longest time possible. All of these ones, with the exception of one, were done on Twitch. And let's get into them. Starting with The Last of Us Remastered. I had the original Last of Us on the PS3, but I never finished it. And I decided to remedy that here with all the midst of the controversy of the sequel that I mentioned in my intro rant about how despite all of its controversy, it still won Game of the Year at the Game Awards over Ghost of Tsushima. And too many other Game of the Year awards when, yeah, I'm not even going to get into that, but this first game is still damn good. It has quite the fucking story into it, and quite frankly, before everything went to hell, this game was something else, in a good way, though. There was a couple tough, ridiculous spots, but on the whole, I was pretty happy to have finally played through it fully, and yeah, the first one is a recommendation. I saw that Good Bad Flicks had finally gotten around to beating it, so I figured, hey, I should do the same as well. So I did, and yeah. Moving on to better horror compared to TLOU 2, Condemned Criminal Origins, a monolith favorite of mine, or what has become a monolith favorite of mine, that really just oozes an atmosphere, like a mix of J-horror and like the movie Seven as well, and it's just, it really is something else. I was very happy to have knocked this one off because it was creepy as fucking hell, scary as shit, especially when you play it in the dark as intended, like most horror games. This is definitely worth a playthrough. I got this one for free when several years back Sega was giving out free PC games for a while, and I happened to get this and some other ones, so yeah, play it. Now here's the one lone one that I did not beat on Twitch, Dino Crisis 3. I already have a review typed out for it. I just need to record the audio, record some footage, and I'll bang it out. But let's just say I do not have very many nice things to say about Dino Crisis 3. And I got it as a Christmas 2018 gift. This was the metaphorical lump of coal in a stocking that hasn't been used for God knows how many years on my end. Yeah, I'm going to go into more detail with this one, but be prepared for some madness. Thankfully, cleansing the palate back to Twitch horror month for me, Cold Fear. This game is kind of like Resident Evil 4, but set on a ship of sorts, but you can actually move around and shoot. Not a particularly long game, but a damn crazy one as well. You're trying to investigate, like, some bad science has gone wrong, resulting in a mutant creature forming, and a mutant thingy, or whatever, monster being formed of sorts, and yeah, mutants and stuff, and infections and parasites, and you have to go clean it up, basically. But you're on this ship, like, the main character you play as is a member of the Coast Guard, and you're on this ship for the first half of the game, and it's creepy as hell, trying to find out what's going on. You rescue one of the people involved in this madness, caught up in it, and then the second half, you take place on this oil rig, investigating it further, and it's a great game. It's a kind of, I don't know if great, but it is underrated a bit too. One that doesn't get talked about as much. This one usually goes on sale for like around $2 or so to $2.50 on Steam. So that's probably your best bet for giving this one a go. Finally, to close out horror month, I played Dead Space 1. Dead Space took a lot of influence from films like Event Horizon and all, because you're in space, you're on this spaceship, and you're trying to investigate what's going wrong. Your crew has been taken down, there's these crazy creatures and all. It is, man, that game is something else. I wish I had played it sooner, but, what are you gonna do? Things are the way they are for a reason, you know, but I'm happy to have played it nonetheless. Sadly, I ran out of time before I could play the sequel, but I will be including it in 2021's Horror Month on Twitch in October, so I may even start it with that, so that's something to look forward to. See you all, and please do go to check out my Twitch, because I love to do stuff like that, and then some. Okay, this is a crazy thing. I was so busy for the month of November that I didn't beat a single game off my backlog. I know it's kind of hard to believe, but what are you really gonna do? The closest I could give a mention to here is Sledstorm, which I'm showing the picture of right now, but honestly, it's mostly only that was like feeling carryover from October just to try to do one basic playthrough to get Rival Challenge, while at the same time beating it later on in the month to get all the sleds for all the characters unlocked, like all their max level sleds, and even reviewing it for this year's winter or not this year's, but 2020 winter game pick to be reviewed. But yeah, but I did play one game that carried over from November, that came out in November. I started playing it the week it came out on my Twitch, and didn't beat it until about December 5th, and that is Yakuza Like a Dragon. This is the first mainline Yakuza game to ditch the old action beat-em-up style combat and go with a more traditional JRPG format. While I'm happy with the change, or not fully happy, well, I am pleasantly surprised with how the change turned out. It's turned out a little bit better than I expected. There was still falling into that trap of not needing to needlessly grind just to handle certain bosses at some point. It's a trope that I feel some RPGs just go too far with, but what are you gonna do? I still love the atmosphere. Everything else about it still feels very Yakuza-like. And some mainline characters from the previous games do appear here. Everything else, the essence of it is still kept. The wacky, crazy zaniness, the decent amount of sub-stories, goons to beat up, all the shops to visit, and mini-games and all. Everything is still all here, just presented from a different perspective. Instead of Kazuma Kiryu, you play as Ichiban Kasuga, who kind of end up in a similar position that Kazuma Kiryu was in, but sort of different circumstances, though, where he ends up turning himself in, as opposed to being caught and taking the fall in the middle of a death. But what are you going to do, really? He's released in 2019. Shit goes to hell, of course, as it always does with this game, and then he's caught up in a big, crazy, larger plot to take over a specific part, Ijincho specifically, of Japan, and yeah, it's what you would expect from a Yakuza game. Also, I was pleasantly surprised with the English voice acting as well, considering this is the first mainline game to use an English dub since the first game on the PS2. And can I just say how great things were, that they turned out way better than they should have? Well, or better than expected. I mean, it's almost like night and day, basically, with the differences. It's like, in the first game, they had no direction or minimal direction. They couldn't view the cutscenes, trying to match the lip flaps. It was just a hot mess of direction. Here, the actual time was done, and everything was great, and yeah, sounds great, looks great, plays great, and it's what you would expect from a Yakuza game with just slightly different combat. Also, I'm going to go ahead and drop this hot take here that may irk some people, but Yakuza 7's English dub, and for that matter, all current English Ryu Gakuto Studio Games dubs, which would include the English dub for Fist of the North Star Lost Paradise, and Judgment/Judge Eyes, depending on where you are in the world, plus this game, Like a Dragon, are all better than all the friggin' Sonic Studiopolis English voice dubs. Don't at me. Okay, despite that spiel, we still got more to get through. Next up is Nano Breaker. This is an action game of sorts. It's a hack and slash platformer that was developed by that was designed, I should say, by Koji Igarashi of Castlevania fame, developed and published by Konami, and it's okay. I just happened to find this in my local used game shop, and I ended up picking it up. Not a particularly long game, but it has some interesting ideas. You're fighting like these nano robots of sorts, and like you can change, it's not even really blood, the color, like when you slash them out, but you can change it to look less like blood and give it a more outlandish color, like black, like it's oil or whatever, and it's insane. To be honest, it's not really as good as Lament of Innocence. The style isn't fully there. There's more irritating jump puzzles, and I do feel it is a bit more irritating, but decent. Not great, but Nano Breaker is decent. Now here's one that I picked up. Speaking of other games that got re-releases, like 13 before, finally, the original Freedom Fighters, IO Interactive's other game that isn't talked about as much compared to the main bread and butter, the Hitman series, or even some of the studio's lesser outings like Mini Ninjas or Kane and Lynch Dead Man, or the awful Kane and Lynch 2. The Freedom Fighters is one that got lost in the shuffle, but finally got re-released in 2020 on GOG, Epic Games Store, and Steam, and yours truly picked it up and did a playthrough, and again, it was alright. It's way less stealth-oriented than Hitman, though, and you start to command large armies around basically with you to go and shoot up stuff. And it's basically an alternate reality where the Soviet Union still survives, invades New York, and you were basically caught up in this resistance movement known as the titular freedom fighters, and you have to work to take them down, the Soviets, and just free New York. Decent enough game as well, just I'd probably get it when it goes on sale. And finally, to close out the month, the December, and the whole year for that matter, The Getaway Black Monday. The sequel to The Getaway, which again, I could not find in person, like the Second Hunter, The Reckoning game, which, funny enough, that was a PS2 exclusive, and so is this. But yeah, I just picked it up off eBay, and I've mentioned the story, how I got all The Getaway fully complete in box with the original manual and all the original inserts, Black Label, for $3. So I wanted to see if I could get any extra inserts with Black Monday, but 'tis not to be. There aren't any. Just a heads up for those of you who are looking out for it. Yeah, but I still played through it. Decent like the first game, but it kind of suffers from the same problems as the first. Twitchy driving. The shooting is slightly improved, but the game itself is, it's kind of more the first, but with a little different perspectives. Again, 3 playable characters, although the third one, Sam, is more of a tie-in, sort of like a partner to Eddie, and ties into his story. But there's really not much more you can get into, because if you played the first, you probably played the, you more than likely get an idea of Black Monday. There are some improvements, like it's no longer ridiculously easy to smash the turn signals that you will need to use when you're driving down the road, because it is very cinematic, like the first game. And you're also given a map as well, so you have a better idea of where to go when doing the driving stuff. But it still suffers from problems of the first one, like the twitchiness of the driving, the combat not being too all exciting and all, or not the best, and there's really not much more I can say about The Getaway Black Monday that hasn't probably already been said. Decent enough, but don't go too crazy with it here. It's no wonder the franchise fell off the map, sadly, after this one. And with that, let's do the wrap-up. And there you have it. That is that for 2020 in gaming. All in all, I've beat about 66 games in total, and I have to say I'm very happy with that number. It's a little bit lower than what it was in 2019 when I beat 89 games, but I did beat a decent amount, and it doesn't help that some are not fully classified by date, unfortunately, but this is what happens. It's just I'm handling loads and loads of stuff, and it can be so much insane. And it is but more than 2018, where I beat 61. On the whole, I have to say I'm pretty happy with this overall. I've beaten over 250 games currently, so much so that, yeah, I have that check mark now on my how long to beat profile. But I'm pretty sure, hopefully, as long as I keep this up, I hope to beat at least that many more, enough to 47, enough to get to the title, but shoot, to get to 300, but we'll just see what happens. It all just depends on how things go for me, and I'm hoping that we do have a better 2021. Maybe the whole world can somewhat try to get back to normal, or maybe not, I don't fucking know. Society looks like a mess right now, but we still have gaming, and yeah, we can keep gaming and all like we've always done. And my god, man, the fact that I've done this craziness says a lot. I'm impressed, but what can I say? I'm very happy that I've done what I could while I still can, and yeah. So, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you all for watching, and even though this year has been a mess, and it seems like it brought out the worst in a lot of people, I'm just gonna say this here. So, yeah, maybe we can end on a high note. Take care of yourselves and each other, as Jerry Springer used to say. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.